You can actually see it in the Odyssey, when Odysseus is washed up naked and alone. He's lost his ship, on the shores of Phaeacia, and he wakes to the sound of women's voices, laughing and singing and so on. It's the Princess Nausicaa going down to do the laundry on the shore. Okay? And actually, that is exactly what was going on up until fairly recently, where women were all together. They did all their chores together. They did the laundry. They did the cooking. I can remember this from my childhood in Endicott, New York, upstate New York, among the immigrant Italian women. All four of my grandparents, plus my mother, were born in Italy. And so I actually had that experience. The experience that went on for thousands of years in the agrarian era. Well, women all together. In fact, my mother described as a small child in Italy how all the women would get together to do the laundry and go up the hill to Il Sorgo, which was a fountain cut out of the side of the mountain. Probably went back thousands of years to the Roman period and so on. She remembered the singing, the picnicking, etc., etc.
Something that I understand. One of the, again, in PR terms, one of the major changes that's come into the world with the electronic environment as a total surround. Many meanings. Audience.
Okay, so even though people were laboring physically in the agrarian era, there was a happiness, okay, a sense of identity. There was no quest for identity. Now, it's no place for an independent thinker, okay? If you were an independent thinker, you had no options as a woman except to become a nun. Okay, so I know I would have been a nun, okay, 100 years ago. All right, I know it, okay. And obviously, communities are intellectually repressive in their own way. Nevertheless, we're in a period now of quest for identity, tremendous pressures on young people to form their own identity separate from those old automatic tribal and community affiliations. So I think there's a tremendous, as a classroom teacher, of now, more than 40 years, I can see this, and it's really, there's a tremendous sense of psychological dislocation among young people.
It becomes workforce.
TV is good for that, and same with ads.
What's alive and what you're not.
If the audience can become involved...
Sure. The puree setting really is more of a fine chop.
Oh, sure. You see, so you've got to remember the one thing that in American graffiti that was not present were adults. No parents. Absolutely none. Until the very last scene of the picture at the airport, the parents arrived to buy the tickets to get them out.
So do you still stand by the medium is more important than the content of the medium?
Of course. Because the medium is this huge change that takes place in the world.
Right.
It's the program is not the change.
Right.
Oh no. It's the huge service environment that medium creates. It's like the highway. It's obvious the motor car, it does very little, but the highway does an awful lot to people.
Yeah, so...
Well, the motor car is very minor compared to the highway and the factories and the oil companies. In other words, the service environment is the medium, and that changes people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who travels on the highway. When. Doesn't matter who travels or when.
Yeah.
The highway is what changes people and their relationships, where they live, where they work, and so on and so on, all changed by the highway.
But in other words, the highway, the service environment is the
medium.
Container.
Is the medium.
The medium.
Yeah, that's the ground. The medium is ground, and the so-called message is always figure. Yeah.
But isn't that the same as when you said before that one only became aware of a medium when it was already contained in another medium?
When it's obsolete.
Right.
Yeah. Or Aristotle, they didn't write anything.
They just had the disciples to take it down.
Yeah, that's all.
But were they actually disciples or slaves?
Slaves. Servants.
Stem or stone.
If the audience can become involved... in the actual process of making. In the actual process of
Thumbs up, Rick. That was helpful.
People leapt from childhood into adulthood overnight. This is what happens under electric conditions again. There is no really
Usher women. That is called a gap. A generation
conditions
gap.
again. There is no really childhood is disappearing.
An oral tradition is a great advantage to a literary man. In the 20th century, it's very remarkable that
Oh my God, the public urination, and you know, it's not just on St. Patrick's Day.
Really? Well, you know what, Andy? I'm Irish.
You can't be Irish. You're not obnoxious enough to be Irish.
Yeah, well, I am Irish. I am as Irish as the Blarney Stone and the unfulfilled promises that Cormac McDermott McCarthy made to the High King of Munster. And you know what? I'm not gonna tolerate you making racist comments about my people.
all the best writing has come out of Ireland or the American South.
Antisocial children and such people dare look at the environment. The emperor's new clothes are perfectly visible to them, but to well-adjusted, respectable people, the old clothes are what is.
He could never have copied them by hand.
Oh, no.
And so he spent years trying to get them through Congress, as it were, with the...
We have done these things.
The normal human condition.
Does television have an aesthetic?
Vast affluence available to children standing up in their playpens watching TV.
And if so, what are some of the recognizable...
Of 3 or 4 knows more about the world than Methuselah ever knew. He's been around the planet over and over.
Playpens.
You do not have to invent every type of human resource, put it on the assembly line, it becomes a big, honest to goodness American citizen. Prove their moral lives or their physical or social lives. With an assembly line or with something approaching assembly line, every type of human resource, put it on the assembly line, it becomes a big, honest to goodness American citizen.
If you pick up a newspaper, you are the content, because it only means what it means to you.
Where advertising is heading is quite simply into a world where the ad will become a substitute for the product, and all the satisfactions will be derived informationally from the ad, and the product will be merely a number in some file.
This is a world where you have multi-billion-dollar environment of service images.
The Americans have lost their sense of identity.
No, have vast affluence.
Now, that's what I was interested in. I mean, how many thoughts can you cram in your head?
It isn't a question of how many thoughts. The fact is that when you confront the page at that speed, you apprehend it as
this whole insight into the fact that this was a hidden environment, this habit of thought.
a gestalt.
Now, that I can understand.
And that is a kind of figure ground, and that is depth. And it is a sort of iconology, it is a kind of... Then when you bump one cliche into another, there tends to be a kind of breaking of the carapace, the wrapping, and the cliches gush forth in a world of suggestions and new perceptions. When you take two banal old plots or old melodies, rub them together, exactly, and get a whole world of new music and new dramatic insight. Sculptural approach to the page. Page ceases to be lineal in speed, by the way.
No, I can see that.
Yes, it ceases to be lineal, and you begin to take it as a gestalt.
But surely a reading is half of it is thinking as well as actually...
Remember, we went into that subject. And the real world pouring off those images.
I'm right in this, Philip. It would not specially preoccupy a radio audience or a movie audience.
The world of this vulgar, trashy advertising.
It tells you exactly what you're heading for, 30 years before you get there.